Week 7 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I look to sell and trade this week. The first guy, Trevor Story of the Boston Red Sox. Story, he's been off to a horrible start the first 5-6 weeks of the season, but the last week here, he's on a tear, and the last couple weeks, he's ranked number 1 in fantasy baseball. So on the season, 8 home runs, 33 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, 23 runs scored, a 231 average, and a 311 on base. A Story, he was hitting under 200 2 weeks ago here, but he's really picked things up, and he's hit all his home runs in the last 2 weeks of the season, so he's been on a tear. And right now, while he's gone off his Story, you definitely sell him off because he could revert easily back to his ways where he was just barely hitting the baseball and not showing power, even though I know the power is definitely there for Trevor Story. But now with him qualifying at second and short and with a reemergence in the last 2 weeks here, you could sell him off and get a great starting pitcher in a deal or another hitter who's been more consistent throughout his career. So the last few games here for Story, May 18th versus the Astros, 0-for-3 with a run. May 19th versus Seattle, this was the start of the breakout, 4-for-4, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, a stolen base, 5 runs scored. May 20th versus Seattle, 1-for-4, a homer, 4 RBIs. May 21st versus Seattle, 0-for-3 with a rib. May 22nd versus Seattle, 1-for-4, a homer and an RBI. And May 24th at the White Sox, 2-for-6 with a homer, 4 RBIs and 2 runs scored, but he struck out 4 times in that game. So right now, Story, he's finding a power stroke, no doubt about it, is Story, with 6 home runs in the last 6 games here. So he's hitting the home runs, and that's all I think he's looking for, though, because he's struck out now, is Story, 6 times in the last 4 ball games as well. So right now he qualifies at second and short. He's in the power stroke. The batting average has jumped up big time over the last couple weeks, but obviously he's on way too hot of a streak to keep this power going. And I would sell him off, especially with the qualifications at second and short, which aren't great positions, and definitely not being in Coors Field this season here is going to hurt his numbers, I think, when it's all said and done. So right now, I would sell Trevor Story high, especially after the last week that he's had. The next guy is Brandon Nimmo of the New York Mets. Brandon Nimmo, he's been having a great season, and of course it's a contract season as well for him, where he's looking for that big payday after the season. So on the season here, 3 home runs, 16 RBIs, 27 runs scored, a 295 average, and a 389 on base. And Nimmo right here on one of the best teams so far in the early going of the season, the New York Mets. And he's the other guy that sets the table and leads off. But right here, Nimmo, we just know throughout his career he's been injury prone. And a guy who honestly last season his on base was higher than it was this season. Last year 401 and this year 389. But already Nimmo 149 at bats last season, only 325 after he was injured. So right now this Met team, they're actually hitting the baseball. In the last 2 ball games, they've scored 25 runs on the Mets here. And Brandon Nimmo obviously a big part of that, scoring and getting on base for this Met team. But I don't think the hitting is going to sustain these type of levels, especially scoring double digits in back-to-back nights here. And Brandon Nimmo, he's a solid player, no doubt about it, but I don't think he deserves a huge payday as well with $20+ million a year into next season. So the last few games here for Nimmo, May 19th versus the Cardinals, 1-for-5 with a run and a rib. May 21st at the Rockies, 3-for-7, a run, an RBI. May 22nd at the Rockies, 1-for-4 with a run. May 23rd at the Giants, 2-for-5 with a run. And May 24th at the Giants, 1-for-4 with a run and an RBI. So even in those 2 monster games the Mets had back-to-back nights at the Giants with 13 and 12 runs scored, he hasn't really contributed that much, is Brandon Nimmo. So this guy, he's more of a singles hitter. Good guy that walks, gets on base, but he's not really going to hit home runs or drive in many runs here. He's more average and on base percentage and scoring runs. So right now, I would trade Nimmo. His ranking is great right now at 67 in the fantasy season. And also the track record with it getting injured is another reason I would look to sell him off. The next guy I look to sell off is Eugenio Suarez of the Seattle Mariners. So Suarez, he's having a good season this year compared to last, even though his batting average is still down there in the dumps at 222. But last year, finishing the season at 198. So far in the year for Suarez, 9 home runs, 23 RBIs, 25 runs scored, a 222 average, and a 313 on base. So Suarez, we know he's one of the best power hitters in the last 5 seasons, including a few years ago. hitting 49 home runs is Suarez. So right here, a change of scenery is what he probably needed going to Seattle. And he's hitting the ball with good power, 9 home runs so far in the early going here for Suarez. So the last few games here for him, May 18th at Toronto, 1 for 4. May 19th at Boston, 2 for 5 with 2 runs. May 20th at Boston, 1 for 4 with a run. May 21st at Boston, 2 for 4, run and a rib. May 22nd at Boston, 1 for 4 with a homer and RBI. May 23rd versus the Athletics, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs. And May 24th versus the A's, 0 for 4. So right here, Suarez, this is where the value is good to sell him off. He qualifies at shortstop, obviously, still, which is one of the weakest positions in all of fantasy baseball. So a guy who's got some good power. I know the batting average is horrible, but there's a lot of players nowadays hitting 220s, 230s, and it's not great, obviously. Back a few years ago, even 10 years ago, obviously, if you hit that low, you're pretty much out of the league, but the game's changed, and a lot of these guys, they're just hitting for the fences here. So Eugenio Suarez, he's showing power. Average is serviceable compared to last season at 198 to 222 this year. And with the shortstop eligibility, you definitely could sell him off and get a good starting pitcher. I believe in a deal here for Suarez or another position player in a 1-for-1 deal. The next guy I look to sell and trade this week here, France, his teammate of the Seattle Mariners. So Ty France, I mentioned him early in the season as a guy I look to sell high. And right here, so far, he's playing great baseball, ranked 19th in fantasy baseball on the season, 6 home runs, 31 RBIs, 18 runs scored, a 330 average, and a 400 on base. And over the last couple weeks here, he's gotten red hot once again, hitting 352 in the last 2 weeks. And then the last week, 400. So Ty France, he's locked in. He's got great versatility. And I think you could get a stud starting pitcher for him at this time, because there's no way I think he's going to finish the season hitting 330. I think this year he'll probably hit 280, 290 when it's all said and done. Probably 15 to 20 home run range and 65 to 70 RBIs, which is still a pretty solid season. But right now, while he's playing way over his head with the stats, if you could get a stud starter or even a 2-for-1 deal, if there's an owner out there real desperate looking for France on his team, you could do it. And also with the qualifications at first, second, and third, there's no reason you can't make a great deal in flipping for France this week. The last few games for him, May 18th at Toronto, 3 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs. May 19th at Boston, 1 for 4 with a rib. May 20th at Boston, 2 for 4. May 21st at Boston, 1 for 5 with a run. May 22nd at Boston, 2 for 5. May 23rd versus Oakland, 2 for 4 with a run. And May 24th versus Oakland, 1 for 3 with 3 RBIs. So right here, he's a great bat so far this season for the Mariners, but I just don't see it holding up, especially 330s. And like I mentioned, the last couple weeks, he's hitting out of his mind over 350. And even the last 4 out of 5 games, he's got double-digit hit ball games as Ty France. So right now, he's a perfect sell-high candidate. And I think you could get a good 2-for-1 package or a great stud for him in a deal, especially with the qualifications at first, second, and third. And the fifth and final hit I look to sell and trade this week's Josh Bell of the Washington Nationals. So Bell, he's starting to slow down big time here after he was hitting over the 330s, and I just knew it wouldn't last. Bell, throughout his career, he's a 250, 260 hitter at best, and on the season, still solid numbers. 4 home runs only, though. 23 RBIs, 23 runs scored, at 295 average, and a 380 on base. So his on-base percentage is still great, no doubt, up there at 380. But the last couple weeks here, he's starting to fizzle out, is Josh Bell, and I would try to get rid of him right now while his stats still look pretty solid the whole year combined. But the last couple weeks, like I mentioned, 180s hitting, no home runs, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. And in the last month, 2 homers, 11 RBIs, a 267 average, and a 342 on base. So right here, his average is going down quickly. A couple weeks ago, he was at the 330 mark, like I mentioned here for Josh Bell. But it definitely dropped off right now. And his on-base percentage as well is fizzled out as well. So the last few games here for Bell, May 16th at Miami, 1 for 4. May 17th at Miami, 0 for 2 with an RBI. May 18th at Miami, 0 for 5. May 20th at Milwaukee, 0 for 3. May 21st at Milwaukee, 0 for 4. May 22nd at Milwaukee, 0 for 5. May 23rd versus the Dodgers, 2 for 4 with an RBI. And May 24th versus the Dodgers, 1 for 4. So right here, he's definitely slowing down as Josh Bell. And he's not on a great team either. The only guys they really got's obviously Juan Soto, one of the best players in the league, if not the best. And also, obviously, Nelson Cruz, who's off to a bad start so far this season with a low batting average and low power numbers. So right now, Josh Bell, he's a guy I look to sell off because the numbers are declining and the power's not even there. So that's a few hitters I look to sell and trade here for Week 7 of the fantasy baseball season.